Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's film is This Is Spinal Tap, the groundbreaking comedy mockumentary that follows the members of fictional heavy metal band Spinal Tap as they embark on an US concert tour to promote their new album, Smell the Glove. The directorial debut of Rob Reiner, This Is Spinal Tap stars the incredible improv talents of Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer as the core members of Spinal Tap, with the trio also writing and performing all of the songs as well. And joining me today to talk about This Is Spinal Tap is Troy Culpan from May the Rock Be With You, the #1 website that features the best things you have and haven't heard in the world of hard, glam, melodic, modern pop, rock, and metal. You can also find May the Rock Be With You on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. All of the links will be in the show notes below. And Troy, thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here, man. It's awesome.
So you and I known each other all the way like back in the day. And when I knew that I was going to talk about DC Spinal Tap, I knew I had to talk to someone who knows the music industry in a lot of ways, has followed it, interviewed a lot of people from it. Essentially, you and I are kind of like the same profession, just in different realms.
Yeah,
What you
always
do in
like that.
music, I do in movies. And I just knew I just had to have you on here because this movie is just becoming big again. 41st anniversary happening now, which is just suitable for the brand of This Is Spinal Tap happening
Yeah.
41st. You're gonna love it. Sequel coming out in September. So we have to look back at this movie, which I think, Troy, in my humble opinion, is the greatest comedy of all time. Not only spoof comedy, I'm talking comedy. It's just like in my top 10 favorite films.
Mm.
It's a movie where, since I first watched it, which was on DVD, I got this double disc set that I used to bought 20 years ago or so. But its second disc has got like 2 hours of extra material, which is just as good. Like all the outtakes are just as good as the original stuff. But the first time I even heard of Spinal Tap was actually through The Simpsons, when they were on that episode. But when watching the movie, I'm in love with that film. I can watch that film over and over and not get sick of it. What about you, Troy? Do you remember the first time you watched Spinal Tap, or they kind of came on your radar?
Yeah, so I watched it and I think it was, close to when it came out or a few years after. I got into the sort of that rock bands and stuff when I heard Bon Jovi for the first time in 1987. And, from there, you heard about these bands that were like these big glam bands. You got into the more British stuff like the Def Leppards and Iron Maidens even. And then there was this band called Spinal Tap. And this movie came out and I was probably maybe 14, 15 the first time I saw it. And I actually thought it was a legit movie. I thought this was a real band. And I
Hmm.
was like, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Is this what touring's like? Is this what it is? And it was just something that stuck with me because it wasn't only hilarious, it was kind of like, is this what rock and roll's like? And, you sort of think that's what it is. The riders, the drummers exploding, we'll get to that, and all those sorts of things. But it was just one of those things that stuck with me back from the late 80s that was like, wow, this is different and this is fun. And then, you saw all these bands do these touring documentaries later on, and you went, it's kind of not far off. So it was really interesting to see how it all came together. And then finding out later it was a mockumentary. It was the, Blair Witch Project of the music back in, you know what I mean? It was like everyone thought it was legit. It's amazing.
It is amazing because when it comes out in 84, the whole mockumentary kind of thing was more of an underground. Maybe some horror did it.
Mm.
But like as a mainstream kind of movie, it's something that really didn't happen. And a lot of it comes down to, from doing all my research on it, the pre-production process of it sets the template or set the template for the movie to follow. These guys had this idea. They stuck with their characters. They did background for characters for the year, and then when they did the movie, so they can improv, they knew every question, every answer. They can go into any type of tangent they want. And it's an incredibly interesting movie. So I was saying before, the main principal people here we're talking about, you got Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer, and director Rob Reiner. This is the directorial debut of Rob Reiner in this
Mm.
movie. He was a
Amazing.
TV show host, and he was a star in, I think it was All in the Family was the show that he was in before this. So essentially, the idea of this comes from what I read. So Christopher Guest, he was in the 70s. He was in LA. He's in the lobby waiting for a friend at a hotel, and this British band came in. To this day, he refuses to say what band it is. And the manager says to the bass player, "Where's your bass guitar?" And he goes, "What bass guitar?" He goes, "Your guitar. Where is it?" He goes, "Oh, I think I left it at the airport." And he goes, "What do you mean you left it at the airport? What did I leave at the airport? Your bass guitar. Yeah, I left it at the airport." So this was the dialogue, and he kind of kept this
Yeah.
in his head. And are you surprised to hear that it's a bass guitarist that did this, by the way? I'm not at all.
No. Not at all. But amazing.
So years later, Rob Reiner has this show, TV show called The TV Show. It's kind of like a Saturday Night Live kind of spin-off thing. And Christopher Guest and Michael McKean and Harry Shearer are on this. And Christopher Guest is like, "Hey, we should." I had this idea about this band, so I had actually made up Spinal Tap for this show.
Awesome.
And they did like they kind of created the characters there. And then when Rob Reiner's like, "I want to go into movies," that's when he came back to this idea, and that's when they started doing the whole thing about we're gonna sit down and we're gonna do kind of like almost like the Bible of Spinal Tap. They want to know everything that's going back there. Um, I don't know about you though, but my favorite member out of all of them, because I was a bass guitarist, is Harry Shearer's guy.
Yeah.
And there's many reasons for that. Bass guitar number one, number two, Harry Shearer is just awesome. And his name's Derek Smalls, which I think is like the ultimate kind of guy. Did you
Yeah.
have a favorite member of Spinal Tap along this collective?
He was too, because he was almost like the outcast, if you like. He was the one that was sort of the sitting there smoking his pipe, which I thought was hilarious every time they did an interview. And he was, stuck in that giant egg thing that he couldn't get out of. And it was just almost like the comic relief of the band, even though the main two guys, Nigel and David, were sort of running the show. He was always there in the background, Derek. And it was kind of like the little brother that was, playing along with the big guys. And he was funny to watch every time. His motions going through the metal detector with the, down his pants. Like it was he comic genius. I think he was brilliant.
You mentioned before about music documentaries that came after. There was actually a bunch of documentaries that came beforehand as well, before Spinal Tap came out, which the guys in the movie in the group really took inspiration from. The first movie was this documentary, is Bob Dylan documentary called "Don't Look Back." It came out in 1967. And a lot of their kind of like the kind of like cinema verite kind of stuff, the documentary kind of stuff, that's where they said we need to make something like that, like a
Hmm.
handheld camera throughout the whole thing. And supposedly there's a scene in the movie where at a Manchester gig, Bob Dylan and his entourage were going backstage trying to find a way out and they couldn't do it. That was all captured on camera, so they kept on to that as well. Then there's the band, the Martin Scorsese documentary on the band. And the whole point of Rob Reiner's character, who in the movie is called Marty DeBurgi,
Hmm.
is a riff on Martin Scorsese because Scorsese appears in the documentary as himself and you see him and he's a big fan of the band. So they took that from that movie. And then on top of all of this, Harry Shearer talked about how he knew the keyboard player from Uriah Heep.
Hmm.
John Sinclair was his name. And he was talking about how they just returned from tour and one of the places they played at was an Air Force base. So they took
Right.
that and they put it in the film as well.
Yeah.
And so they got all of these kind of things come together. But what's really interesting as well is that after the film comes out, every rock band is convinced that it's about them. And even though it isn't, like what's the stories that maybe you heard? Like one thing I've heard is that what was his name? Jeff Beck was actually convinced that Nigel was based on him because of the hair and the thing and
Oh,
everything.
you can see it.
You
You
can
can
see
see
it,
it.
but
Yeah.
but Christopher Guest denies it. But Jeff Beck can clearly see. Like, what do you see? Like, you know a lot of bands, a lot of rock bands. What do you see when you see Spinal Tap? What kind of bands kind of bring to mind to you when you see what that band is in this movie?
Yeah, I look at the look, and it was very, very new wave of British heavy metal. Like it is that very Iron Maiden kind of thing. Even the way that they dressed, the way that they acted, the way that even Derek played the bass, it's very Steve Harris. You know,
Hmm.
they obviously took inspiration from a lot of those bands and brought it on stage. Even very early Def Leppard. It's the very English stuff. I don't really see much American in it, but I see that really new wave of British heavy metal stuff that they did. And I think they absolutely nailed it in picking everyone. And if, a lot of members of different bands are seeing themselves in it, they're doing something right, right? So they've nailed it.
Speaking of that early new wave of British heavy metal scene, Judas Priest is another name that kind of
Yeah.
comes up in my research. Supposedly, Rob Reiner went to a Judas Priest concert to try to get like the feel and the sights of what a like a metal concert was like at the time, and he said he couldn't stay in the arena because he said that it actually physically hurt his chest, the reverberation of the guitars and everything. And then from that, he kind of knew what he had to go for regards to like a stage setup and everything else.
Yep.
So this is kind of interesting in that they have this movie, but they know they want to improv the movie. So they're not going to write a script. They have an outline, they have a background, but they're not going to write a script. They're going to go out there and they're going to improv stuff.
Well,
They don't have a major studio yet, so they kind of make what they kind of refer to as their demo tape. They make a 20-minute short, and they're going around to all different studios and are showing their demo, and everyone turns them down.
hmm,
Everyone, because they don't understand it. It's a mockumentary. It's like, why can't you tell people this is you? Why you British? Why this? Why that? And no one wanted it. And then this one bloke named Norman Lear, he was a television producer. He did All in the Family, which Rob Reiner was on. He did The Jeffersons. He was kind of like the patron of Rob Reiner, what he was doing then.
awesome.
And he was the guy who was like, I will give you guys the money to do this. And that's what they did. And so they went out, I think it was like 1982,
Hmm.
Los Angeles, and they had to cast people in the movie who they knew could improv with them because they're gonna do 2 or 3 takes at a time. They're filming 5 weeks and they're gonna go at it.
Yep.
And when you watch the movie, it's like a who's who of cameos in here. Which
I know.
cameos did you pick up when you watched it?
Oh, you got Fran Drescher, you got Billy Crystal, but like a lot of people don't realize the other mime is Dana Carvey. So
Dana
you've
Carvey,
got
yep.
people in there that it's amazing. But yeah, I'm looking at all these people going like, I know who that is, and I couldn't picture a lot of them, but there are all those faces you've seen in every movie in the 80s or the comedy shows or SNL or anything like that. But Fran Drescher was an obvious one, and Billy and Dana were my other two, and a couple of them skip my mind now, but there's probably about 10 that I've missed. Like it was just amazing to see that, just watching it again and going like, "Oh my God, they were doing this then." It's so good.
And you also had Paul Schaefer from the
Oh, of course.
David Letterman band. He
Yep.
plays Artie Fufkin, the promoter of Polymor Records. Angelica Houston, she makes the design for Stonehenge, which they gave her for 11 inches, but they wanted 11 feet. Bruno Kirby plays the chauffeur. Tommy Pichetta in the movie. Supposedly, the reason why they had a bitter chauffeur in it is because they had found inspiration from this some story that supposedly Keith Moon accidentally ran over a chauffeur one time and killed him. So they took that in there. Fred Willard was the Air Force lieutenant in it as
Ah,
well.
that's his name. He's
Um,
great.
then you have June Chadwick. She plays the girlfriend of David St. Hubbard. So they call her like the Yoko plot. And she
Yeah.
wasn't in the script initially, but they knew they needed something else to kind of bring it in. They needed that tension. So they had that. And then as Ian Faith, the manager, they had this guy named Tony Hendra, who was a very known satirist at the time. He did like satire stuff and whatnot. So he's brought in to do that role. And then of course you got the other band members. Rick Parnell plays the drummer Mick Shrimpton, the fourth drummer in
Yeah.
the band. The previous three having met bizarre deaths. So what do we remember? We remember
Someone
uh,
exploded.
someone exploded, gardening
Uh,
accident,
yeah. It's just they come up with
and
the most ridiculous things for them. It's so good.
on the spot as well. So when Rob Ryan is asking them questions in the interviews, they don't know the questions and he doesn't know the answers coming back. So the one supposedly where he said the third drummer choked on vomit, but it was someone else's vomit.
Yeah, that was great.
Supposedly he had to call cut because he couldn't handle it anymore because that was too much for him. Hi guys, Matt here from Matt's Movie Reviews, letting you know that the Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel has launched channel membership. This provides exclusive videos and other cool stuff as well for all channel members. It's under one tier, one price, and with that one price you get exclusive reviews. For example, I'll be going through the American Film Institute's top 100 movies. So every week I'll do a new review based on that movie list. You can get exclusive reviews based on your requests. Request a movie review and I will review it for you. You'll also get exclusive content for behind the scenes stuff as well. You also get exclusive interviews that I haven't posted yet as part of my podcast, like older interviews with Academy Award winners and other great filmmakers and actors as well, and a bunch of other cool stuff as well. I hope you can all join up, be part of this great experience I have on offer for you. Support indie content creators, support a movie critic like myself who is trying to make it through the content creator space. Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel memberships. Please join and get some great exclusive content. Rick Parnell, who played Mick Strampton, was actually in a band at a time called Atomic Rooster in the UK, I think they're called. So they're kind of a known band. So he's a drummer there. He did a lot of kind of drumming for a lot of different places.
Mm.
Then you have the keyboardist, Viv Savage, who's played by David Kath, who has one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is "to have a good time all the time." Kind of that was his line in the film. So he was the other kind of band member in there, but everyone remembers the main three.
Mm.
Um, so if you look here, Michael McKean said that we asked everyone to come in and improvise with us. We made very few miscalculations. The actors got the jokes and flew with it. They did 50 hours of material,
Wow.
50. And so it took 2 years to
Yeah.
edit everything down because it was like an 80, 90-minute film as well,
Yeah.
to put it in there. Of all these cameos that are in the movie, which scenes of these ones kind of do you like the best? I have a couple of my favorites, but what's your favorite of the cameo performances?
It had to be the first time they went to the party when they met Fran Drescher and the head of the label and everything. That entire scene is phenomenal because they think they're the biggest band in the world. They're about to do this new thing. They're being told that they can't do it, and it was if you're just watching it, you're mesmerized by it. And I think Fran Drescher for me is always a polarizing character anyway, and she did
Mm.
so well in that scene, going to take the phone call and all those sorts of things. I just think that was one that really stuck out. But then you watch when it goes from the food guys who are mimes for some reason. That was a different story in itself. But then you go, hang on, I know who that is. And then it goes to Billy Crystal, and you're like, well, I immediately know who that is. And it's just, you wouldn't expect to see these people doing that. And it comes back to what you're saying about they obviously got the right people. But that whole scene with the party and the food, that's the one that sticks out for me.
You remember what Billy Crystal says to Dana Carvey? Mime is money. Mime is
Yeah.
money. That's the one thing there. I actually really liked Paul Schaefer in the movie
Oh, yeah.
as the promoter of Polymore Records, where they have this signing session at a record store, and they got all the band there, and no one shows up, and
Yeah.
it's just the most kind of awkward kind of moment in there as well. And then he's like, kick my ass. I want you to kick my ass. Just do it. And he always uses his full name. Hello, my name is Artie Fufkin. Hey,
Yeah.
Artie Fufkin, Bollywood Records. I really like that one as well. When it comes to the film itself. So 5 weeks, handheld camera, 16 millimeter cameras. So pretty much they're going out there, and people that they had filming, I'm pretty sure the guy who was a cinematographer was the same bloke who filmed the whole Hell's Angels debacle with the Rolling Stones, that concert.
Oh,
I
wow.
forgot where that concert was in the 60s. But he was the guy that shot it. And the guys didn't know what was going on. They couldn't kind of understand. It's like, you want us to do what now? But this isn't a documentary. He goes, yeah, I know, but you have to pretend it's a documentary and kind
Oh,
of go
wow.
at it. If this film went the scripted route, just say they had like just a normal script and they shot another movie, there's no way it will be as popular or be as effective as it is as it
Nah.
is today, right? There's no
Would
way.
have been forced. Like you would have felt it. Like I think the honesty in it and the way that they do it without knowing what's going to happen next is what makes it. Like if it was scripted, you'd know, and it just become a movie. This wasn't a movie. This was basically people being filmed, and they're a band on tour. That it was basically unpredictable, and that's what I loved about it.
Um, Supposedly when they did the Elvis scene, so that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie where they go sing Heartbreak Hotel at the thing. It is Elvis's real grave. They just went to a graveyard and made a mock-up, grave site, kind of marble, whatever thing.
Yeah.
And the only reason they did Heartbreak Hotel because that's the only song they could afford the rights to at the
Oh,
time.
wow. That was
So that's why
hilarious. I was
they.
watching that again recently, and it just the the respect that they're trying to convey just comes across as hilarious. And it was just, I don't know, it was one of those things where only they could do that. Only they're
Yeah.
the only band that could do that, and it was so good.
I think what makes it work so well, and something that a lot of people kind of pass over, I think, is that they're incredibly talented musicians
Oh
and
yeah,
songwriters.
yeah,
And I want to talk about the music a bit. I
yeah.
actually have the not to be mistaken, this isn't the Black Album Metallica. This is a Black Album Spinal Tap with the songs at the back. And I love the songs in
Mm,
this movie because not only are they funny, but they're kind of jams. They're really catchy. They got hook to it, and they got like they're actually there's substance behind it. It's silly, but there's substance behind it.
mm.
My favorite song, hands down, is Big Bottom.
Oh yeah.
Which was Christopher Guest said it was the inspiration of Fat Bottom Girls from Queen, so
Yep.
they wanted to do something like that. And why I love it is that, and it's one of the great unsung jokes in the movie. So they're all playing bass guitars, but Derek Small's got a double neck bass guitar, so
Yeah.
the
Oh,
bass
yeah.
player has to have two necks, so just so you know that he is the bass guitarist.
Yep.
And the lyrics for it, I sing that song around the house, like sometimes to my wife just to piss her off, and she's like, "What the hell are you singing?" That's a good one. Hellhole, Sex Farm, so many good ones. Is any songs of the Spinal Tap catalog, especially in this movie, that really kind of speak to you as a rock metal fan?
I think you just named them. Like watching the double bass for me, because I always loved, growing up with Led Zeppelin and the likes, the double neck guitar. It's such a statement. And seeing him up there doing that, it's just so over the top that it was ridiculous. But I think, all those ones that you named, but one I love that's outside of the movie is Majesty of Rock. So,
Mm,
that came a little bit later. And it's sort of one of those songs that is became Spinal Tap, if you like. I think they played it at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert later on, but you're watching all these songs and you go, these are legitimate songs these band have written and they're actually recorded and released. And no other band can get away with that. Like it was perfect. And I think you named probably the top three out of the movie that I think were outstanding. I don't know. It's just you just watch it and you go, man, I love this band. Like I just love what they're doing. And I wish, well, I shouldn't say wish, they are back. It's just like you wish that they hadn't gone away, and I can't wait to see what they do next. And I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later on.
it's kind of like a musical in a certain way because it's a mockumentary concert film a lot of
Yeah,
times. You see him on stage, they're doing stuff. You know, Nigel kind of like doing his little electric guitar thing, and then he will use his foot and kick the other guitar that's on the
that
stand.
was great.
Kind
The
of
best
like
solo ever.
best solo. It's kind of like mimicking kind of like stuff that Jimmy Page does and all that with all these things.
Mm.
My favorite one though is the pods from the song that they do there where Derek gets stuck in the pod.
Oh yeah,
Supposedly they actually borrowed that idea. It was a 70s band, not the Angels from Australia, but there's a band called Angel from I think they were from the US. And they did the pod thing themselves. So they kind of borrowed it from that. And it makes me want to go to another question for you. So you've been to a ton of concerts,
yeah.
I'm sure of it. And the Spinal Tap concerts are notorious for everything that can go wrong can go wrong. You had the pod thing, the Stonehenge thing, playing at the airbase and picking up frequencies from like planes flying overhead, which is another great moment. Do you have any Spinal Tap-ish moments that you witnessed yourself at concerts? Because I got one, and I was wondering if you have any yourself that you remember.
I've seen, pyro not work. I've seen, things not come down from the top of the stage or get stuck. I've seen microphones get lifted up by the curtain as the show starts. I've seen people walk off stage because, they've thrown a tanty, just like
Mm.
Nigel did. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I've seen a lot of what is there. I've never seen anything like the pods. That would have been one of the greatest things. I wish I'd seen a band gets stuck in a pod and then it magically opens at the very end. But yeah, so like the pyros, the curtain was the best. That it turns around and start the thing and it lifts up the microphone stand. It goes up and we're all watching it fall like go up to the top. It's just, it's perfect. Oh, I've been to Guns N' Roses shows where Axel hasn't come on for 3 hours and I assume he
Mm.
couldn't find the stage. So, I always think he's backstage trying to find where to go. Those sorts of things goes into your head because this has become music lore, Spinal Tap,
Mm.
the Hello Cleveland. We're trying to find the stage from the backstage. But it's just, mate, too many to count, but nothing of the note of the Spinal Tap, thankfully.
So the one that I saw was actually at my first concert I ever went to. It was the Kiss '96 reunion concert.
Nice.
And he played, remember the good old Sydney Entertainment Centre? They played
Hmm.
there, which supposedly is making a comeback. I'm not, I think they changed the name and I think they're changing the name back now. I'm not sure. Anyway, so the band does Detroit Rock City. And during the last kind of outro, kind of like harmony solo thing that they do, these platforms are lifting the three guys up in the air, and
Hmm.
then the drum riser kind of goes up as well. They do it, the song's finished, everyone comes down, but Gene's stuck up there. And we're all watching him, just like, is Gene going to come down or what? And he's up there for like a good 5, 10 minutes. It hasn't come down yet. And then Paul comes out and they put the spotlight on Paul, and Paul does a little impromptu version of Shandy.
Yep.
And as they're doing it, you could just see people kind of in the background, just looking up at Gene and trying to get him down and all that. And that was like my first concert I've been to, and it was the closest thing to like a Spinal Tap moment
That's
that I
great.
had in real life as well. So that was a pleasure to be able to see something like
Amazing.
that.
That's what happens when you got that much production. Something's pretty much always going to go wrong. And for a band like Kiss, they know what they're doing, man. And they're like
Yeah.
the American Spinal Tap, if you like, dressing up and all those sorts of things. And that's hilarious. I haven't seen that happen yet.
So they released the film, comes out 84. It does okay, but it's
Mm,
not something that really kind of sets the world afire because number one, it's different. It's a mockumentary about a band, and even if people think the band is real, no one knows who the band is because this is kind of like the introduction to the band. So it
mm.
doesn't do that well. Where it does really well is when it comes out in video, and that's when they kind of the lore of Spinal Tap starts to happen.
Yep.
The critics loved it. I mean, Siskel, Ebert, 4 stars. It was top 10 lists everywhere. But when it started to kind of come out in video and then later in cable, that's when the Spinal Tap kind of language kind of comes out.
Yep.
It goes to 11 and all that kind of stuff as well. Something that I really love about Spinal Tap is something that I mentioned before was that the reactions from musicians to saying like this is me, this is
Yeah.
them, like how they kind of builds its own mythology over the time as to who this band could be. There's a band called Foghat. I'm sure like you remember them. They're a band that was big in the 60s. I think they did Slow Ride. Did
Yeah,
Foghat
they did.
do Slow Ride?
Yeah.
Supposedly they one of them came up to one of the guys from Spinal Tap and said that they were certain that the guys from Spinal Tap bugged their tour bus because they had that in real life, Foghat had a girlfriend taking over the band and was using astrology to plan the tour. So
Wow.
this was actually happening.
Yeah.
So there was that kind of thing going on. But then, I talked about the Jeff Beck thing as well. And then you got this thing where some bands actually are inspired by Spinal Tap. For example, it goes to 11, the Marshall amps
Yeah.
which now supposedly, I think in the new movie there's got one that goes up to 20. I think there's going to be one going up to I think there's a joke coming up about it going up to infinity because it's something that Christopher Guest has been playing with. It goes up to infinity. But
Amazing.
Eddie Van Halen was supposedly the first guy to actually get a customized amp with his dials going up to 11,
Yeah. Became
which
a
I think
thing.
is pretty cool. Have
Well,
you ever heard of anyone kind of like finding inspiration from the Spinal Tap thing? Oh, another one, Black Album, Metallica.
yeah.
Another one
Well,
more black.
you look at that like it's the Smell the Glove, the Black Album, and then you've got the also the Smell the Glove, the Strokes did it years later with This Is It, and that basically is a almost a play on Smell the Glove. There is that a lot of the bands clearly took it on board, and you even hear bands up on stage sometimes say "Hello Cleveland." Like you hear them the rock and roll before Ozzy was doing it. It was all that stuff. Like they were doing that, and if you're a band and you haven't seen This Is Spinal Tap you're doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like they've clearly what they should do is all watch it and take it as firstly as interviewer 101, learn what not to do when you're doing your interviews, and also how to act on stage. But it's Metallica, when I was watching again, you know, Smell the Glove and they bring out this black album, I'm like, there's no way that Metallica didn't look at that and go, we want to do something like that. I think it's,
Hmm.
and for a band like Metallica who, you know, may not have seen Spinal Tap. They've seen Spinal Tap. They definitely have. You know what I mean? It's hilarious.
There's actually footage from that Metallica documentary, a year and a half in the life of Metallica, where they are at the Freddie Mercury concert, and Spinal
Mm.
Tap actually confronts them and says, we'd like a little bone to pick with you guys because talk about and they're talking about the Black Album. And speaking of Smell the Glove, I don't know what you are like in regards to the pop world of things. Sabrina Carpenter, she had an album come out this year.
Yeah,
And the cover for that was a woman on her knees, someone with pulling her hair with a hand, and that's almost like verbatim of what the Smell the
yep.
Glove is. So clearly, what was sexist in 1982 has become sexy in 2025. So
It's crazy,
that's a
isn't
kind
it?
of
Like
it's a
you'd never get away with it back then. And this was a rock band, but now there's a little pop girl. I like Sabrina Carpenter. I like pop music, but it was kind of like, wow, really? We can do this now? Like it was great. And I'm like, you wonder if the art director or whoever knew about that or tried that on purpose to see if they get away with it because it couldn't be done back with Spinal Tap back in the day. You know what I mean? Like it's very interesting to see how it's all come around.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. Let's talk about best scenes in a movie. And the reason why I consider this to be the greatest comedy of all time, because there's not one scene in a movie that doesn't have a laugh.
Yeah,
There's something going on there. But if I could break down, if you and I could break down like just all the scenes and bring it into, say, top three or top four best scenes
yeah,
in the movie,
easy.
what will be on the list? 11?
Number one's the amps go to 11, like the guitar
Yep.
room where it's just like, oh, don't touch that, don't
Yep.
even look at it. And these guitars, I don't know if you know that these guitars were all on loan from Norman's Rare Guitars, which is still
Okay.
a shop that's in California, and a lot of people shop there and go there still. That's why he's wearing a Norman's Rare Guitar shirt in one of the scenes. But that is absolute music lore. This goes to 11. It's one louder. It's just like it's absolute perfection. I think that's one of the best things about the movie, and that's what people remember it for, to be honest, the most.
The other one, I guess, would be the concert footage. Stonehenge
Yeah.
is one that'll definitely happen. So I didn't know this, but in 1992, they released a concert film called Return of Spinal Tap. And so it was concert footage where they're going to do a world tour, but typical Spinal Tap, their world tour consisted of one day in Wembley.
Yep.
So that was their world tour. And where in the original movie, you had the Stonehenge come down, it was too small. In the 1992 Return of Spinal Tap, it was too big. They couldn't fit it in the building, which I think is just great because I love just like the two extremes of it. So that's
Yeah.
that's definitely going to be up there, right?
Yeah, perfect. And I think there's a one that sort of for me stands out a lot. It's when Nigel's playing the piano and playing this beautiful, D minor. It's the saddest chord of all time, and then it's like, oh, what's it called? I lick my love pump. And I'm like,
Yeah.
absolute comedy genius. Like just that little throwaway of what's it called? And Rob Reiner is there like, oh, okay. Like that was great. I love that scene.
The next one, I think probably the most infamous scene outside of 11 is the airport security check where Derek is hiding a zucchini in
Yeah,
foil in his pants.
yeah.
That's definitely got to be there. And I imagine that maybe someone somewhere at one time, some rock and roller somewhere, maybe might have done that. I haven't heard any stories of it myself. I haven't read every rock biography.
Hmm,
It had to have happened sometime, right?
you'd think
Something
so.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing with this with Spinal Tap is they would have taken inspiration from a lot of things they would have heard throughout the years and all these bands. You're talking about when the drugs were running rampant back in the 70s with Fleetwood Mac and all these sorts of bands. And, I'm sure there would have been all this stuff that actually happened. They went, oh, we're going to push the envelope and try it and put it in the movie.
The next one, I think that probably rounds it all up is the backstage. They don't know where they're going, kind of all
Yep.
around. I mentioned before the Bob Dylan story. There was another one as well that I forgot to mention, and it had to do with Tom Petty, which is kind of like, Bob Dylan adjacent in kind of ways.
Hmm.
So I'm just looking here where this thing is. All right, so supposedly Christopher Guest was watching some Tom Petty documentary, and sure enough, he's in backstage and he took the wrong door and he opened the door and wound up in an indoor tennis court. He's like, what the hell am I doing here? Again, that had to have happened. I've read a lot of interviews where that scene in particular, the getting lost backstage kind of scene, you don't know where the hell you're going,
Hmm.
is kind of like the most kind of cited one. I was like, yep, that's happened to us before.
Yeah, I've done that once. I was at a gig and I got to go and hang out with the band afterwards. I won't name who it is, just a Australian band. But we're trying to get to actually from the stage to backstage, and we got lost. And the singer threw out a "Hello Cleveland" while we were walking around. You know what I mean? Like it was amazing. We eventually found it, and we were all sitting there having a giggle about it because it happened. It actually happened. Like it was hilarious. Hey, there's one more scene that I really loved in the
Go ahead.
or a lot more, but Nigel's sitting there with Marty and the backstage rider where he's got the small bread,
Oh, yes.
like, and it just shows, all those stories about the riders that all these bands have with no green M&Ms or no brown M&Ms and all that sort of stuff. Like when he's talking about you can just fold it over and it's like, but no, it's like it's not right. And it's just like you imagine the preciousness of these rock stars that, it's not what they want. It's tiny bread. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know how I forgot about that one because of course the infamous, David Lee Roth story about the no like blue. Supposedly the reason he said that they put that in their rider was to make sure that they were reading the fine print, the small
Yep,
print of
what it
everything else.
is.
So it wasn't so much diva demand, even though it is a bit of a diva move. It was more like it's like I know that you know about everything else we need because I can see my bowl of M&Ms and all of them are gone,
Yep.
which is kind of actually a smart kind of move on
Yeah,
their part, I
it just
must admit.
became, became that thing of legends.
Very true.
Yeah.
So the movie comes out and it grows in lore, and I mentioned before Simpsons, they were on
Mm,
Saturday Night Live. They do, real concerts, all this kind of stuff. And then something interesting kind of came about in 2016, and this was quite shocking to me. I don't know if you knew this or not. So Harry Shearer filed a $125 million lawsuit, fraud and breach against Studio Canal, who owns the film rights,
mm,
and Vivendi, who owns the Studio Canal, have. And his claim is that he himself and the other co-stars in the film only received 179 just $179 of merchandise and music from the movie for 3 decades. That's all they received. They went through the
wow.
books and he's like, we were getting nothing. They think about it. They wrote the movie,
Mm,
the soundtrack, everything, and they were getting all that. So he starts the lawsuit. Christopher Guest and Michael McKean jumps in. Rob Reiner jumps in as well, and then it's up to $400 million in damages. Is what they seeked.
mm,
And so the end of it, it comes down to there was like the judge says yes, you can go ahead with the lawsuit, and everyone involved in it, including at this time Universal Music Group, were like, look, let's sit down and we'll sort this out. And so the end of it is like undisclosed sum
mm.
handed over, but now the distribution rights for the music rights especially goes back to the guys.
Wow.
So which also makes sense about why they're making a sequel now as well, because if they
Yeah.
make the sequel, the 41st anniversary, there's a lot of costs to recoup here
Yeah.
now that they own the rights to it. But that's kind of crazy. Imagine for like 30 years, you're imagining everything swimming, like just you made this kind of like this groundbreaking movie.
Mm.
It's almost kind of like a comedy institution. And you found out you only made like $179 on its own on merchandise and music and everything else. That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. I don't know how that contract would have come about, or they would have signed that off, or what would have happened, but I'm glad they got their, payday. I'm like, that's bad. And it makes you wonder if it's one of those statute of limitations things where they're allowed to do something now after a time of a disclosed, year or whatever, when they can actually now do a sequel, which is, wow, that's crazy. $179. Can't do anything with that.
No, $179 even back in like 1982, you probably couldn't do much with it as well.
Yeah.
That's like Don Simpson's like cocaine budget in one day.
Yeah.
Um, so we come now to a sequel coming out in
Yeah.
September. Um, so I love this movie. I love it a lot. And the thing that's so great about it is that it's kind of like an independent film. It was like boots on the ground. No one really knew who these guys were. They came out of nowhere. They make this movie. It's improv. It's just classic line after classic line.
Mm.
And then they announced the sequel, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know. You know how it's like with rock bands, right?
Hmm.
They do the last tour, they leave on a high, and then maybe like 10 years later, even though they've done the Motley Crue, they signed the contract, even though
Yep.
Kiss said this is the last one, all this stuff, they come back. And while there's like a little glint of nostalgia and everything else with it, you just know that it's not going to match what you've seen before. And sometimes the stuff with the what's happening in the present can really mar the things that happened in the past, the memory of it.
Mm.
The trailer looks cool. The trailer
Oh
looks
yeah.
good, and I do, and I know these guys are really kind of are gifted and they're really great. But the thing that the trailer that I see with the trailer that is different to what they did with the original movie, it seems more polished and glossy.
Very
Where
much
the
so.
original This Is Spinal Tap is very much kind of like that cinema verite, kind of grungy kind of thing to it. Um, I don't know. I'm going to watch it.
Oh
Kind
yeah.
of trepidous about it too. What's your feelings about it?
Yeah, look, when I watched the trailer, I was just like, it became a movie. Like you got Paul McCartney, you got Elton John in it, and I'm like,
Mm,
okay, well, I don't know, it felt like it lost the real. part of what it was. But in saying that, I don't know how they're going to set it all up. I don't know how it's going to work. But it just feels like it's become, like you said, a polished thing that isn't that Blair Witch. It's like watching Blair Witch 2 when they made it into that thing, and it was not the same as the other one. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, all right, I'm going to watch it because I think it's going to be hilarious and they look phenomenal. That they're old, they're disheveled, they're playing a venue because it only became available because Stormy Daniels cancelled. Just it's that sort of stuff. I think it's absolute. Just he probably threw that in there, by the way. It probably wasn't written. He probably just threw that out there, and I think we can expect the same sort of comedy, just with in a 4K lens rather than a 720.
The thing that kind of puts me off a little bit is when you have like McCartney and Elton John and all these guys in it. The thing about Spinal Tap that made them really kind of appealing and alluring is that they're kind of like the outsiders, they're kind of like
Yeah.
the losers. They're on the last end. By the time Nigel comes back in the band, they're playing at some type of outdoor venue where they're below the puppet show in the billing. They're doing
Yeah.
what's it called? The song called that Derek Smalls wrote, Jazz Odyssey, which is
Oh,
like these
yeah.
jazz flute. Yeah, they're talking about doing Jack the Ripper musicals and such. Um, and so when they're hanging out with kind of like the big wigs of the industry, it kind of feels like, I don't know, it kind of feels out of place for them to be there.
Mm,
But again, I'm going to watch it because, I love the guys. And I don't know about yourself, like I watch a lot of Christopher Guest movies outside of Spinal Tap, Mighty Wind and Guffman and then Best in Show and all these ones as well.
mm.
Incredibly talented, and all the stuff that they've done since then is pretty good. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that the talent overcomes any type of trepidation I have on my part.
Yeah, I wonder if the setup of the whole movie is going to be that, over the years they became this huge band that these McCartneys and Elton Johns idolize, and they play into the story a bit. I'm hoping it's not forced, if you know what I mean. Like I'd love to see it where, they're talking about and they show those fake photos where McCartney's hanging out with, Nigel or David and those things where they're playing tennis or something. You know what I mean? Like if they can make it as dumb as possible but make it real at the same time, that's what I want.
How many drummers do you think they've gone through over the decades?
I think it was something like 11 or 12. I think it was some ridiculous number and I can't wait to see. I love that they, in the trailer, where they go to old mate from the Roots and he's just like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, because he knows the story of what happens to the drummers. And it's like, I think I was reading something about when they threw or did auditions back in the day or something like that. And Mick Fleetwood came in a fire retardant outfit, like sort of thing. So it was kind of like they're all playing on this thing of the drummers, which is thing. And I think even in The Simpsons, they had the issue with the drummer too, when the
That's
devil
right.
was coming down, he's playing like really low. Like
Yep.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that.
I think so too. I mean, comes out September 41st stuff is out now. Like it's like a 4K kind of transfer.
Every time you say that, it
Um,
makes me laugh. 41st. It's like it's
yeah,
perfect. But
it is right. I mean,
yeah,
they could have easily done a 40th, but
yeah,
41st just makes it mwah, chef's
yeah.
kiss kind of stuff on there. But yeah, this is Spinal Tap. To me, I don't know about you, but to me, it's my favorite comedy of all time. And it's not only because just like the it's in the realm of the music I kind of like. It's like the parody of the stuff that we dig, right? But it's
Mm,
also just the way they made the film and the jokes. Like the jokes still last. The jokes are so good that if you still repeat them and you still hear them again,
yep.
you still laugh at them. And I think that's a power of really good material right there.
Yeah, I did a watch again on Saturday night because, leading up to this, and I was sitting there just laughing my ass off. It was just like you forget about the when Derek runs in and he goes, "Oh, they're playing you guys on the radio," and it was their
That's
old
right.
band, and then like,
Yeah.
"Oh, the Where Are They Now" files, and they're all like, "Oh," like it was
That's
just
right.
so good.
What was it? The originals and then the new originals,
Yeah,
something like
uh,
that, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I
very, very
love it.
clever.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. It's a great movie, and it gives me pleasure when I don't know about you, but on YouTube I watch a lot of kind of like reaction videos, like when people watch movie reactions.
Mm,
So when a younger generation kind of watches it, they still see the humor there. and that's just really cool. And again, it just comes down to the great talent, everyone involved in that
True.
movie. And speaking of like great talent, what's involved, I want everyone to make sure you go check out May the Rock Be With You, because Troy, man, you're interviewing such great kind of rock stars and everyone over there. Lately, you had Kevin Rosdale on there, and if you go onto his YouTube, actually, which I will have on the show notes, I'd really tell you to check these out, because I really dig the interviews that you do with people, because I've interviewed a lot of people myself, and I really dig when people do the interviews. The number one, they know their stuff,
Mm.
and number two, when they talk to people, they do it in kind of a personal way. It doesn't come across as kind of like fake, kind of like disingenuous kind of stuff. It's like you
Yep.
really like the material, you like the talents, you know them. You probably talked to them like 3 or 4 times beforehand. You probably flew over to the States and watched these guys even before they came to Australia several times as well. So
Yeah.
I really, really, really recommend people, if you love your rock music, love your metal and all this, everything in between like I do, May the Rock Be With You. I'm going to have everything in the show notes. But until then, Troy, I thank you so very much for your time today. And man, keep it up to 11. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Matt. Good to talk to you, man. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.